Look, I need to know. The man I'm looking for. Have you seen him?
Seoul, South Korea, midnight. Rain hitting glass like it has somewhere to be, a city that never apologizes for how fast it moves, how quickly it swallows people whole. She'd heard that about Seoul, read it in travel blogs, seen it in airport magazines. What she hadn't read, what nobody warns you about, is what it feels like to land in a foreign country with nothing but a photograph, a dead phone number, and the sinking truth that the man you loved might be someone you never actually knew. Her name was Vidya Monroe, 29 years old, a forensic accountant from Atlanta, Georgia, a woman who spent her career following paper trails through smoke and mirrors, finding the truth that numbers tried to hide. Ironic, because the one lie she hadn't caught was the one sleeping right beside her. Khan Whitefield, her fiancé, gone for 3 weeks, no calls, no texts, no trace. The Seoul Metropolitan Police said he'd never entered the country. His employer in Atlanta, an import-export company, said he'd resigned 6 months prior. 6 months, and he'd told her nothing. So Vidya Monroe did what Vidya Monroe always did. She followed the trail herself. And if you've ever loved someone who disappeared on you, if you've ever stood in a foreign city holding a name that nobody recognizes, then this story is for you. Hit that follow button right now, because this one goes places you will not see coming. Incheon International Airport, Vidya rolled her single carry-on through arrivals, jaw tight, eyes scanning. She had a name, one name, Bob Lim, an old colleague of Khan's, someone he'd mentioned exactly twice in 3 years, a consultant based in Mapo-gu, Seoul. If Khan had been in this city, Bob Lim would know. She found him on a corner near Hongdae, a small, nervous man in a too large jacket who nearly spilled his coffee when he saw her face. "Vidya? He said you wouldn't come." I said a lot of things. Start from the beginning. Bob Lim was not a brave man. He made that clear within 30 seconds of sitting across from her. He talked with his eyes on the door, his hands around his cup like it was a life preserver. Khan was working for someone here in Seoul, not import-export. That was the cover. He was moving money, clean money into dirty channels, or dirty money into clean ones. I'm not sure which direction it went. For who? Bob Lim, long pause. The Choi Organization. The name landed like something heavy dropped on a tile floor. Vidya knew enough about Seoul's underworld to know that name. Everyone did. People who worked in finance, in government, in international banking. The Choi Organization wasn't just Korean Mafia. It was infrastructure. They had fingers in shipping companies, in tech funds, in real estate developments all along the Han River. And Khan, her Khan, the man who cooked her jollof on Sunday mornings and argued with her about whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie, had been laundering money for them. Where is he now, Bob? I don't know. I swear I don't know. 3 weeks ago, somebody came asking questions. After that, Khan just wasn't here anymore. She sat with that for a moment. 3 weeks. Exactly when he'd stopped responding to her messages. She paid for Bob's coffee and walked back out into the rain. Okay, so her missing fiancé had been laundering money for one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations. Fantastic. Nobody tells you this in relationship books. She needed to get inside the Choi Group's legitimate front, a glass and steel investment firm in Gangnam called Choi Capital Partners. Vidya had spent the morning photographing employees through a cafe window across the street, logging faces, building a mental roster. She didn't notice the black SUV that had been parked behind her for 40 minutes. She noticed the man who stepped out of it. Tall, dark suit, the kind that doesn't come off a rack, a face that was almost unbearably composed, the kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from complete and total control. He stood on the sidewalk in the rain, like the rain was the one that should move. He was watching her. Not the building, her. Rana Choi, calm in lightly accented English. You've been sitting in that cafe for 2 hours. You've ordered 1 Americano and taken 47 photographs. The lens on your phone, you tilted it 7 degrees to avoid the window glare. Vidya didn't flinch. She'd been caught before. The trick was never to flinch. I'm a tourist. You are Vidya Monroe, forensic accountant, Atlanta, Georgia. You flew in on KE 086 31 hours ago. Your fiancé is Khan Whitefield. A beat. A very long beat. Steady. Then you know why I'm here. I know exactly why you're here. That's the problem. His name was Rana Choi, second in command of the entire Choi criminal organization, the man who ran operations while his aging father, Bhaskaran Yoon, who had married into the Choi family and taken the name as his own, sat at the top and let others get their hands dirty. He was the one who got his hands dirty. He didn't take Vidya to a back room, he didn't threaten her. He took her to a restaurant, a private room in a Korean barbecue house in Itaewon, and he ordered for both of them without asking, and then he told her the truth, or a version of it. Khan Whitefield stole from us, not money, information, client records, the names of every legitimate business we use to move funds, every bank account, every contact in every country. A full ledger. He's a thief. He's a liability. There's a difference. Where is he? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Because whoever has him, or whoever he ran to, has leverage to everything I've built, and I cannot allow that. Vidya looked at this man across the grill, charcoal smoke rising between them like something ceremonial, and she made a calculation. He wasn't lying. She'd spent enough years reading financial deceptions to know when someone was performing a truth versus telling one. His eyes didn't shift, his hands were still. He actually didn't know where Khan was. So we both need the same thing. Don't romanticize it. I'm not romanticizing anything. I'm a forensic accountant. I follow money for a living. You want your ledger back. I want answers about a man I thought I knew. Our interests overlap. Rana Choi studied her for a long moment. She didn't look away. You understand what it means to be in a room with me. I understand exactly what it means, and I'm still sitting here. Something moved across his face, quick, almost imperceptible. Something that wasn't quite respect, but was close enough. They made an arrangement, not a partnership. He was careful not to use that word. An arrangement. She would use her skills to trace the financial trail Khan had left behind, the ghost accounts, the dummy corporations, the breadcrumbs that only someone who knew accounting like she did could follow. In exchange, Rana would give her protection, access, and the truth about what Khan had been doing in Seoul from the very beginning. She moved out of her tourist hotel and into a private apartment in Yongsan, one of Rana's properties, clean and modern, and very clearly watched. She told herself it didn't matter. Find Khan, get answers, go home. That was the plan. Plans are so cute when you're making them. The first week was transactional. Video worked, Rana provided. They communicated through short, efficient messages and one daily briefing in a different location each time. A rooftop cafe one morning, a park bench by the Han River another afternoon, once in the back of a moving car through Mapo-gu while Rana took calls in Korean that she didn't understand but could read in the tension of his shoulders. She learned things in that first week. She learned that Rana Choi never raised his voice, that his danger was entirely contained, a pressure system rather than a storm. She learned that he ate the same breakfast every morning, doenjang jjigae and plain rice, and that he had a younger sister he was fiercely protective of, who lived in Busan and thought her brother ran a legitimate investment firm. She learned that he actually read, history mostly, Korean history, Japanese occupation period, the economics of post-war reconstruction. There were always 2 or 3 books on whatever surface was nearest to him. She told herself these were just observations, professional profiling. She was reading him the way she read balance sheets. Then one night, she cracked the first layer of Khan's ghost accounts and found something that changed everything. Oh no! Khan hadn't just stolen a ledger from the Choi organization. Khan had been feeding information for 18 months to a rival syndicate, a Busan-based operation called the Jang Network, run by a man named Min Jang, who had spent the better part of a decade trying to dismantle everything Rana's family had built. Khan was a plant. He'd been placed inside the Choi organization's financial network specifically to gather intelligence, which meant the man Vidya Monroe had agreed to marry had never been hers at all. He'd been somebody else's weapon the entire time. She sat with that information for a full hour before she called Rana. He arrived in 12 minutes, which meant he'd been close, which meant, she realized with a strange feeling she refused to name, he'd been nearby on purpose. 18 months. Every transaction, he flagged everything to a handler at the Jang Network, account under the name Park Soo-jin, routing through 3 shell companies in Macau. You found all of this tonight? I'm good at my job. He looked at her then, really looked, not like she was an asset or a variable, like she was a person sitting across from him who had just discovered her entire relationship was a constructed lie and was still working, still functioning, still doing the job.
Are you all right? No, just that. No performance, no pretending. He sat down across from her at the table strewn with her notes and printouts and cold cup of coffee, and he didn't try to fix anything. He just stayed. They talked until 3 in the morning. Not about Khan, not about the ledger, about other things, about Atlanta. She described the summer humidity, and he said it sounded like Seoul in July, and she laughed, actually laughed for the first time since landing in this country. She told him about her mother, who had taught her that numbers don't lie, even when people do, who had been a high school math teacher in Decatur and approached every problem, financial, personal, emotional, as an equation to be solved. He told her, quietly, about his father, Bhaskaran Yoon, who had come from nothing, who had built an empire out of ruthlessness and intelligence, who now sat in a house in Gangnam, slowly disappearing into dementia, calling Rana Choi by his dead brother's name more days than not. He built all of this to leave something behind. Now he can't remember what he built. Vidya didn't say anything. She understood what it meant to watch a parent become someone you no longer fully recognized. Something shifted that night, quietly, irreversibly. She didn't want to think what it meant. The second week moved faster. The Jang network, realizing their asset inside the Choi operation had been exposed, made a move. 3 of Rana's legitimate businesses were hit simultaneously with coordinated financial attacks, regulatory investigations triggered by anonymous tips, bank accounts flagged for suspicious activity, a public smear campaign through a Seoul financial blog. Min Jang was trying to bury the Choi organization before Rana could regroup. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Con Whitfield resurfaced. Not in person, through a message sent to Vidya's personal phone, a number she shouldn't have had access to anymore, which told her the Jang network still had eyes close to her. "Vidya, I know you're there. I know what you found by now. I need you to listen to me. I'm not who you think, but neither is he. Rana Choi is not someone you can trust. Walk away, please. Whatever he's promised you, walk away." She played it twice. Then she showed it to Rana. He listened without expression. "He's trying to pull you out of position. If you leave, the trail goes cold. The Jang network wins. I know that. You're not leaving. I said I know that." Another look, that same one, the one she'd started to recognize, that moved across his face when she surprised him, which apparently she did, regularly. They traced the message back to a burner phone registered through a cafe in El Giro, and from there, through 3 more financial threads that Vidya unspooled with the precision of a surgeon, they found Khan. He was alive. He was in a safe house in Dobonggu, not a prisoner, a guest, a protected asset. He'd gone willingly. Rana's people moved that evening. Vidya insisted on going. "It's not safe. He was my fiancé. I need to hear it from him." Rana looked at her for a long moment. "She's with me." The safe house was a 3rd-floor apartment above a dry cleaning shop. Khan was there when they came through the door, sitting at a kitchen table, looking older and thinner, and like a man who had been making hard decisions for too long. He looked at Vidya like she was something he had broken and couldn't repair. "You shouldn't have come here. Tell me the truth, Khan. All of it." He told it. All of it. He had been recruited by the Jang network 2 years before he ever met Vidya, placed deliberately near the Choi organization's financial channels. The relationship with Vidya had been coincidental at first, then it hadn't been. The Jang network realized she had skills that could be useful, and they encouraged Khan to deepen the relationship. But somewhere in there, he said, and his voice broke slightly on this, somewhere in there it had stopped being an assignment. "I love you. That part was real. I know that doesn't..." Vidya didn't cry. She'd done her crying on the plane coming over, before she even knew the full truth. Something in her bones had already known it wasn't going to be a simple answer. "Did you tell them anything about my finances, my contacts, my clients?" "No, never. That was the line I never crossed." She believed him. Against everything, she believed that much. Khan was taken into Rana's custody, not for revenge, but because he held pieces of information the Jang network would kill to recover. He became a negotiating chip in the war that had been building for years. Vidya should have gone home then. The trail was closed. She had her answers. Vidya didn't go home. She told herself it was because the financial records Khan had compiled were a mess, incomplete, disorganized, potentially missing the key account threads the Jang network had used to fund their sole operations. Someone with her skills needed to compile them properly. She told herself that. The real reason sat across from her most mornings, eating doenjang, reading history, looking up at her occasionally with that composed face that started keeping her up at night. It happened on a Thursday. She was working late in the apartment. She always worked late, when the door opened and Rana walked in carrying food from a restaurant 2 blocks away. He did this sometimes, without announcement. She'd stopped questioning it. He set the containers on the table beside her papers and looked at what she was working on. You found the Macau routing. An hour ago, they were using 3 separate shell companies simultaneously, rotating the routing to avoid pattern detection. Whoever set this up understood financial forensics. Khan set it up. Vidya quietly. I know.
She stared at the screen for a moment. He was good at this. He could have had a legitimate career. Most people in my world could have had legitimate careers. She looked up at him. Including you? He was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down across from her, not at the other end of the table, but closer, close enough that she was suddenly aware of the distance she was not maintaining. I was studying economics at Fiancé, before my brother died, before my father needed someone to... He stopped, set his jaw. Before things changed. What would you have done if things hadn't changed? Monetary policy, central banking, something boring and clean. She looked at him, this man with the contained power and the history books and the quiet grief for a life that had detoured, and something in her chest moved sideways. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. His hand was on the table near hers, not touching, just near. She moved hers just slightly. His fingers covered hers gently, like a question. She didn't pull away. The answer was already in the air between them, had been for days, and they'd both been pretending not to see it. What followed wasn't impulsive. It was almost the opposite, deliberate, careful. 2 people who both understood the weight of what they were choosing. It was, also, and she would admit this to herself if no one else, the most honest thing that had happened to her since she'd landed in this city of rain and smoke and a name nobody recognized. The Jang network moved 3 days later. Min Jang, realizing his operation was fully exposed and that financial records Vidya had reconstructed were enough to bring multiple government investigations down on his organization, made a direct play, not financial, physical. They went for Vidya. She was walking back from a convenience store in Yongsan with 2 members of Rana's security detail flanking her when the car came around the corner too fast. She moved before they did. 3 years of her mother insisting she take self-defense classes, which she'd resented every Saturday morning, turned out to be relevant tonight. She made it to a doorway. The detail did the rest. It was over in 4 minutes. Rana was at the location in 9 minutes. His face, when he reached her, that composed, controlled face, cracked completely for approximately 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. Are you hurt? I'm not hurt, Rana. Vidya. I'm not hurt, Rana. I'm okay. He held her face in his hands, both hands right there on the street, and looked at her with something that didn't require words. She knew then, probably had known for days if she was being honest with herself. The aftermath moved quickly. The reconstructed financial records were handed to a contact Rana maintained within the Korean Financial Intelligence Unit. Not a full disclosure, never that, but enough to bring the Jang network's legitimate operations under investigation. Min Jiang was arrested within the week on charges unrelated to the Choi organization, brought down by the very paper trail he thought was buried. Khan cooperated. In exchange for testimony, he received a settlement, no prison, but permanent removal from South Korea, and a set of conditions he would spend years living inside. He asked to see Vidya once before he left. She went. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough." "No, it's not. Are you all right? Are you going home?" She considered the question. Eventually, he looked at her face, read something there. Him. Soft, not unkind. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. "Be careful, Vidya." "I'm always careful. You came to Seoul alone to find a missing man connected to the Korean Mafia. You are not always careful." She laughed. She couldn't help it. It was the last time she ever saw Con Whitefield. And now, the bittersweet part. Because this isn't a clean story. It never was. Rana Choi was still Rana Choi. He ran a criminal organization. He made decisions that Vidya, as an accountant who had spent her career operating within legal frameworks, could not wholly endorse. There were things he did that she didn't ask about, things he was that she couldn't fully reach. She knew this. She went in knowing it. But she also knew, because she'd seen it, that inside the structure of who he'd been forced to become, there was a man who read Korean history and protected his sister's innocence, and sat up until 3 a.m. with a woman who was grieving, not because it was useful, but because it was kind. Complexity doesn't cancel itself out. She knew that too. She called her mother from the apartment in Yongsan on a Sunday morning, Seoul sun coming through the windows for the first time all week, actual sun after all that rain. "Mama, I'm going to be here a little longer." "How much longer?" "I'm not sure yet." Her mother was quiet for a moment, then, "Is this about the man you didn't tell me about?" "How do you—" "Baby, I have known you for 29 years. Something in your voice changed." Vidya looked toward the doorway where Rana stood with 2 cups of coffee, pretending not to listen, pretending badly. "It's complicated. Everything real is complicated. Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you happy?" Rana glanced at her then, held out the coffee. Something in his eyes that he kept everywhere else but there in that look. Something that still scared her a little. Something she was choosing anyway. "I think I'm getting there." She stayed. Not forever. She was Vidya Munro, and Vidya Munro had a life, a career, a city in Georgia that remembered her name. She would go back, she knew that. But not yet. For now, there was a man in a dark suit reading history at a kitchen table who looked up when she walked in like she was the thing he'd been reading about, like she was the part of the story worth getting to. For now, that was enough. For now, in this city of rain and revelation and second looks at things you thought you understood, that was more than enough. Some trails don't end, they just lead somewhere you didn't expect. She had flown to Seoul to find a missing man. She found something better. The truth. And herself, which maybe had been the missing thing all along.